failure feeds on failure. And just think about this past week. You of course, have the Democrats' massive wins over Republicans last week. And the deeper Republicans dig into that, the more they tell me the news gets bleaker and bleaker. You look deep in those numbers in Virginia, in the statewide races, in the local races. If you look in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, if you look in New Jersey, terrible, terrible news. It's like Steve Bannon told me a week ago. Right after the election, gains Republicans made over the past 10 years, gone in a night. Republicans have basically lost 6 seats over the past week also in these redistricting wars between Gavin Newsom and what happened in Utah. Some shocking numbers. I know you've seen them. A poll came out yesterday, I believe it was AP, that showed only 1 in 3 Americans, 33% of Americans, support the way Donald Trump is running the United States government. Shockingly low numbers. And he lost about a dozen points, even from Republicans. Keep going down the list, and you see, of course, the president's approval ratings in a spate of polls have cratered into the 30s. And there you see U.S. adults, that is AP, NORC, only 1/3 of U.S. adults agree with Donald Trump's management of the federal government. And finally, Jonathan, Democrats in that generic ballot test, which really sort of tests the strength of each party, Republicans are further behind today, 8 points, than they've been in that generic ballot test at any time since the 2018 blue wave, where Democrats were swept into power. So you have all of this happening over the past week, and then yesterday, boom. As I said, failure feasts on failure. More revelations coming out on the Epstein case, and it is bad news for the White House and bad news for Republicans defending the White House. And it raises for me a question that maybe you can answer. If we've heard from NBC in the past that Donald Trump was not in the Epstein files, if that's what Tom Winter and also our own Ken Delanian said, why are they having the DOJ, why are they having the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI doing something as grossly inappropriate as trying to lobby members of Congress to get their names off of
what do we know about that?
Of this discharge petition? It's just what I guess if the reports are right, why is the White House freaking out so much?
This is not the behavior of someone who doesn't have something to hide. I think we can safely say that. And Joe, you and I spoke last night about all of this, and I believe my trenchant analysis at the time was, quote, really bad. And I'm sticking with that this morning. This is indeed really bad for Republicans and the White House right now. First, backing up just a step to last week's elections. As we learn more and more about it, it's the breadth and depth of Democrats' victory pretty stunning. As you say, first of all, every county in Virginia, every single one was shifted, moved points towards the Democrats. Democrats picked up things they've never had before, like in Georgia. There were in Pennsylvania. Wins in Mississippi broke blue. Of course, we saw two state houses switch or remain blue in New Jersey and Virginia. And yes, the government shutdown ending a few days later took the wind out of the sails for some Democrats briefly. I think there was, some questions as to tactics there. There was some from the party base that were disappointed, and some lawmakers said as much, that they felt like this was the first time the party had momentum since before the 2024 election. And they felt like they were giving it away. But even as we get a few days from that first deal, and the government, of course, officially reopened last night, there's a sense here that, okay, maybe this was still a win for Democrats after all, that they've set up Republicans for a tough vote on health care in the weeks ahead, that the Republicans are still the party that has to own the idea of rising prices and not addressing affordability. And then yesterday, Joe and Mika, this is the bombshell of the story that simply will not go away. As hard as Donald Trump is trying to make the Jeffrey Epstein matter go away, It simply won't. And it was sort of a panicked behavior. That's how people put it to me yesterday in the White House. When we started seeing those emails, when Trump himself, as well as some of his top DOJ officials, pushed Republicans to remove their names from the discharge petition unsuccessfully. It still was signed. It still hit the number of votes needed. There's a sense here that this story, the Epstein story, has gaining really momentum. And it's not quite clear where it goes next, but it's certainly taking a real toll on this presidency.
Well, let's get to them. Thousands of emails have now been released from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, many of which mention President Trump, shining a renewed spotlight on the president's ties to the late convicted sex offender. Both Democrats and Republicans on the House Oversight Committee unleashed the never-before-seen emails yesterday, received as a result of a subpoena from their investigation into Epstein. Democrats highlighted 3 messages that name Trump, including this one from Epstein himself to his longtime co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, currently serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking crimes. Epstein described Trump as the, quote, dog that hasn't barked, and alleged that Trump spent hours at Epstein's home with the redacted name of a victim. In another, Epstein claimed that Trump, quote, knew about the girls. It's not clear what Epstein means in these emails, and MSNBC has not independently confirmed any of these allegations. Republicans on the committee later released a trove of more than 20,000 emails and documents accusing Democrats of cherry-picking and saying the public deserves the full truth. Several of those emails also show Epstein focused on Trump and hinting that he had damaging information on him. Like this one from 2018, where Epstein said, quote, I know how dirty Donald is. The president, who has denied any wrongdoing, called this a hoax and a distraction from the government shutdown. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt pushed back when asked about the email yesterday by reporters.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Just a correction there, Jonathan O'Meara. That's not what we've read previously on why Jeffrey Epstein was barred from Mar-a-Lago. Explain specifically what Donald Trump's complaint about Jeffrey Epstein was.
Well, the explanations have changed repeatedly. We've heard versions that there was a fight over a property. There's a dispute about they both were eyeing the same piece of land there. We've heard Trump say that Epstein was acting creepy towards some of the people there, some of the younger women who work at Mar-a-Lago. But the emails, to your point here, suggest, at least in Epstein's words, and we're just based off the emails, but he's suggesting in his correspondence with others, including a writer, that he was still in touch with Trump later than Trump has said. Now, again, we don't know the specifics of that, but that the Epstein in these notes suggests they were in touch longer than we're told to believe, and also that Trump, in Epstein's words, knew what was going on as Epstein was beginning to face some real legal trouble.
Yeah, well, and he also recently said, again, because the story does keep changing, recently he said that Epstein stole a young woman from Mar-a-Lago, took her away.
Yeah.